I used to see minimalism as a very extreme thing. I thought it was reserved for single people living in a small flat without the need for much access. I never thought it would apply to me, a mom in her 30s with two small children and a business she's trying to run from home. That was until 2 years ago when I found myself heavily pregnant with our second baby. This was after years of infertility and multiple baby losses. I was so excited and so equally terrified at how our life was about to change yet again, when I was already feeling so overwhelmed by the stuff in our home. It was then that I started reading more about minimalism. And I slowly started decluttering. The change was clear, maybe more so to me than to those around me. But I accidentally found myself a minimalist. And today I'm here to share with you 7 lessons I learned from 2 years of becoming a minimalist of some sort. The levels of minimalism will fluctuate, but the intentionality matters. The funny thing is, this point where we are at right now might not be the point where we had the least amount of stuff in our lives, because a few years back we actually moved country. We lived in Romania and we did a massive declutter before moving to the UK. That was about 5 years ago now. We moved into this tiny flat in London. And so in that tiny flat, we actually didn't have that much, even though we had a toddler at the time. And that was simply because the space didn't allow it. Not much storage space, tiny bedrooms, the typical London flat. And so we just didn't keep much. And I found that I didn't really miss a lot of things. But then we moved into a bigger house because we always thought, we're a family, we need more space. And that was true to a certain degree. But I always felt like we needed more storage space. And the thing that happened when we moved into a 3-bedroom house was that we started filling the house with stuff. And that's how I ended up, heavily pregnant and really overwhelmed with all the stuff in our home and just feeling like I can't get on top of it. As much as I tried to tidy and organize, it just never felt like I was getting there. Now I feel like because we are more intentional and I'm more aware of these things and how the clutter affects me, I can be more intentional with, not just the clutter in my home, but also what I'm bringing in. So I do think I'm now more minimalist in the mindset, even though we might have a few more bits because we have 2 children now instead of 1, like we did when we used to live in that tiny flat in London. So the levels of things in our home will change constantly because we go through so many different phases of life. We might have no kids or 1 kid or 3 kids, and that changes completely the amount of stuff that we need. And also everybody has different definitions as to what being a minimalist means. But to me, it's more about being intentional. I just wanted to feel content in my home, to be able to keep on top of it with greater ease because I'm in a busy season of life and I just do not have the time or energy to manage all of that stuff. Maybe when I'm older, maybe when my kids are all grown, I will have more mental energy to dedicate to like items in my home. But right now, this level of minimalism has helped me so much and has brought so many benefits to my life, like being able to be more present with my kids rather than focusing on the stuff in my home that's stressing me out. I also realized that I was using both shopping and organizing and doing little projects like that around the house as a coping mechanism for a long time. For example, when we had our first baby loss during those infertility years, I remember even now I filmed a video. I was just so heartbroken and I needed something to keep both my hands and my mind occupied. And so what I did is I went out and bought a whole bunch of organizers and I did a kitchen organize with me video. When I was editing the video, I realized my hands were still covered in bruises from where I had all of the IVs when I was in hospital after the baby loss. And I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with using things like this as a coping mechanism, but I realized afterwards that there might have been other ways for me to cope a bit better with these things and things that might not have affected me so much in the long run, because impulsive shopping and just getting a whole bunch of things is usually not the thing that's going to help us long term. And not that there's anything wrong with organizing or getting stuck in a project like that, obviously. This is just something I learned about myself that I thought was interesting. How I use things like this as a coping mechanism. I did find that I like getting stuck in a project like this. And it's also something that gives you immediate results, like organizing a cupboard. You can instantly see the before and after, especially if you take a picture. And yeah, I just realized I love organizing things, but I also want to be more aware of how I'm using maybe shopping just for the sake of using them as a coping mechanism, because that might not be the healthiest approach, depending on the situation, obviously. I realized that taking time with home improvement works best for me. We bought this house about 1.5 years ago, and we are still kind of slowly decorating it. Through these past few years of minimalism, I have really learned to slow down. But sometimes we move into a new place and we want to instantly make it feel, amazing and just get it to that end picture that we have in mind. But sometimes it's nice to actually live in the space for a little bit and see exactly what we need from that space, maybe what areas are working, what's not working, and I'm still taking my time with it. There are still things that we might want to do here and there, but I have found that slowing down has been really helpful. So we've slowly done like painting rainbows in the kids' rooms, or painting a wall in their room, adding some lamp fixtures in my son's bedroom, adding the dining table, adding a little topper, like a wooden topper, to our TV unit, because I felt like it brought some warmth to the space. And being more intentional with purchases like that, especially big ones like furniture and decor, these can be quite expensive. But slowing down with them means that there will be less regrets later on. Not that it's perfect, like we make mistakes, we might want to change things, but if we take our time with it, it's less likely we'll regret them immediately. I think I have one painting project coming soon. I kind of go back and forth on this, but it's something I haven't been able to stop thinking about over the past few months. Can you guess what it might be? Let me know in the comments. But I'm trying to tell myself that even if I try this painting project and it doesn't work out, or I find it's a mistake, we can always learn from it, learn what we dislike as much as what we do like. And so for this project, I've kind of been looking into color analysis and what effect different colors have on us and our emotions. And I found some really interesting classes about this topic on Skillshare. Cheers to Skillshare for sponsoring this part of the video. If you've never heard of it before, Skillshare is the largest online learning community with thousands of classes on a lot of topics. The class I took most recently is Color Psychology by Anna Marku. I loved seeing all the research and data behind how certain colors can make us feel, like brighter spaces versus, darker, moodier spaces. And as someone who's not the most skilled at interior design, I found those classes really helpful. One thing I spend a lot of my time doing is editing videos like the one you're watching right now. So naturally, I wanted to learn two things. One was how to edit faster and how to get more time back for other tasks. And for this, I found Ali Abdul's video editing class really helpful to learn some tricks to speed up the process. And number two, I also wanted to learn how to incorporate more storytelling in my videos. And for this, the filmmaking class by Dan Mays has been really helpful too. So whether you want to learn more about maybe getting playful with art, how to incorporate minimalism in your life, maybe piano lessons like I did in the past, or even business classes to start your own business or grow on social media, then Skillshare is the place for you. And the first 500 people to join Skillshare using my link in the description box will get 1 month free trial. I've also learned that I don't need huge storage spaces. So about 2 years ago, we were in a rental house and we were looking to buy our first house here in the UK. And so when we were looking for a house, you always had your criteria of things that you want to have in the new home, the non-negotiables. One of those for us was having a garage. I just thought that, we're a family of 4, we need a garage because we have stuff. We just need a place to put it all. And then that was the point where I was kind of going through the decluttering process. And as we were decluttering our garage that we had at the time in the rental, I realized actually a lot of the things in the garage are things we don't use, we don't need. And the garage was one place where it was kind of like the graveyard, where we would put things that we don't really need, but you just want to have them there just in case. And yes, we had a few like, Christmas decor, things you get out seasonally, but a lot of the items in there we just didn't really need. And as I decluttered, I realized that we weren't using a majority of that garage. And if you are familiar with the UK, people don't generally use the garage to put a car in there. It's mostly for storage. I think it's like 90% of people or something use their garage for storage, and we did the same. But then when we started looking at houses, I was already kind of doing really well in the decluttering process, and we found this house that we are in right now that didn't have a garage. It does have some loft space, not a ton, but we realized actually we could get a house that, has more living space, but less garage, like storage space. And we realized that's actually more important to us. And we scratched the garage as one of our non-negotiables because we just didn't need that much storage space anymore. Not to say that we don't have storage in this house, but it's not as much as we thought we needed. And sometimes having a garage can actually be a bad thing because you are more inclined to fill it with stuff, and you kind of throw boxes in there and let things pile on because it's out of sight, it doesn't bother anyone. That's until you have to actually tackle that. The next thing I learned through my minimalism journey is that it's really not about the numbers, contrary to what some comments might say on YouTube. How people say that you only need to have a certain amount of number of items to call yourself a minimalist. But we all have different lifestyles, and just because you have a certain amount of items, maybe more than an extreme minimalist, doesn't mean you're not applying the mindset of minimalism and the intentionality behind those items. For example, my toddler used to have a lot less items in her wardrobe. So my kind of goal for her wardrobe would always be to have 5 of each. So for example, 5 t-shirts, 5 long sleeves, 5 trousers. But now that she started nursery, I realized actually she needs a little bit more in each category because I have to take a few spares to leave them at nursery. And every time she comes back from nursery in the middle of the day, I kind of need to change her as well because she gets quite dirty there. But what I have found is that it's so easy to add more to their wardrobe or to add more things when you need to. You can so easily go to Vinted and buy some more baby items or toddler items, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. And so I found that it's not about focusing on the numbers, it's more about being intentional and finding the right number that works for you. I also found that saying no becomes easier, whether that's when I go shopping and I see a bargain or a home decor item that I probably don't really need, but it looks cute in the shop. I find saying no and leaving it there so much easier than I used to. And the same when we think of any purchases we might want to make, we kind of take our time to really think it through before making a lot of impulse buys. Decluttering and taking whole bags out of your house with stuff of items you bought and you wasted money on and you didn't truly need is a true eye-opener, or at least it was for me. So some might say decluttering is wasteful, but I beg to differ because I have found that through decluttering, and this is what I found with a lot of my students as well in my Simply Decluttered program, is that getting all of those things out of your house makes you realize how many impulse purchases you were making, and it makes you buy less of that stuff in the future. And that's truly where you break the cycle and you make a change in both the world and your budget as well. The regret never came. When I started decluttering, I had this fear that I think a lot of us have, that I'm gonna get rid of this item and then a few months down the line, I'm gonna really miss it. Well, what I have found after 2 years of decluttering, probably about 50% of our stuff. In my wardrobe, I got rid of maybe 80% of even more of my clothes. And I can honestly say that I can't remember one item that I'm missing from what I decluttered. I actually don't think I can remember even half of the stuff I got rid of, because most of those items are excess and they're things we don't need anyway. So maybe minimalism isn't a quick fix for everything in our lives, but it sure makes you more intentional with what you allow into it and how you spend your life.